everyone. Welcome back to Medicine for These Times. I'm Beth Weinstein, and I'm so honored to finally be connecting with Brad Adams, Dr. Bradams, here live and not just chatting on Facebook or being on similar summits and panels. It's so nice to have you here, Brad.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Let's finally meet you too.
So I didn't realize you have a PhD. So Brad is a doctor, and he's also the founder and CEO of the Los Angeles Medicinal Psychedelic Society, otherwise known as LAMPS, an organization dedicated to integrating psychedelic medicines into mainstream mental and spiritual health practices since 2015. His passion and commitment have enabled LAMPS to become a leading provider of education on the responsible use of psychedelic medicines and training for licensed therapists and psychedelic healing providers. As such, LAMP is the host of many safe spaces in Los Angeles that serve as the set and setting for bravely transparent conversations about not only the light, but also the dark sides of psychedelic medicine use. As the guiding force behind LAMPS, Brad is dedicated to advancing the organization's mission to promote responsible, evidence-based, and best use practices for using psychedelic medicines in human wellness. And you can check out all the LAMPS links and Brad's links. And if you're not in his Facebook group, I am. It's a great place to have really insightful discussions. And then also there's the Insight Symposium coming up, which, we'll have the link and we'll talk more about. But Brad, as always, my first question is what was your path? How did you not only develop your career in this space or doing what you do, but, the path of the medicines and psychedelics? And I always love to know, what did you used to do? Were you ever a corporate attorney?
Yeah, well, I worked in a law office for 7 years as a gopher, but and that kind of dissuaded me from going into law, to be honest.
For the best.
I am nothing against attorneys, but it just wasn't me. It wasn't my personality, and even though certain aspects of it were interesting, but yeah. So I started out my undergrad college wanting to go into medicine. I wanted to go into be a plastic surgeon. That was after reading a book called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, and yeah, a great book. And it seemed like the best, interesting blend of science and art that also affected someone's psychology, their internal way they see themselves. And I was impressed by how minor changes in a person's appearance, like a small nose change, they just blossom in terms of self-esteem, and whereas other people don't see any difference at all or slight difference. So yeah, so I started there, and then in my freshman year, I took a psychology class, Psych 101, and I was just, and my adopted father is a psychologist, and so I just fell in love with psychology, and thought, God, the human mind is the most interesting thing in the universe that we know of. So I just changed to psychology and got a master's and PhD, and then kind of got more in a research tracked instead of going right into clinical, because I had a lot of research background. I love doing research, and I always lucky enough to find good causes that I felt proud of. AIDS research, Alzheimer's, cancer. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot, and I still want to do research now. Just in psychedelic field. So that's kind of how I got into psychology, and then as a teen and later, I dabbled with psychedelics, but it wasn't until I think 2011 or 12 or something, somewhere around there, where at UCLA we get emails from different research findings and stuff, and most of the time, to be honest, it would be something that either didn't interest me or I didn't understand, like really different field. So, but I saw one coming from Charlie Grove's work, and where they gave psilocybin to persons with stage 4 cancer to deal with their death anxiety. And I about fell off my chair. I was thinking, oh my God, this is a thing now? I had no idea. So and that's what kind of got me on that path. And so, yeah, so Ashley Booth, I'm sure for a while, the Ware Project was the only game in town in LA. And so she asked my wife at the time if I would be interested in giving a talk on mushrooms as medicine. And so I jumped on it, even though I didn't have a lot of experience there. So I really boned up on it. And and then again, I was just fascinated with seeing all of Roland Griffith's work, and just again, it blew me away. I was saying, this is it. And so I brought a sign up sheet, and that's how I started Lamps. And it started as a very small group. I think we had maybe 10 people the first meeting, and the focus was primarily at that time. I wanted to get people interested in research, either learning about it or doing it themselves. And that quickly morphed into what it is more like today, like getting guest speakers. I got Des McKenna, Joseph Barsuglia was I think the first one, and you talked about his Iboga experiences. So, and it kind of took off from there. It just grew into, I mean, sometimes that we couldn't cram enough people in that room. It was like, people sitting on the floor. And then around the time when it was just starting, I was thinking, God, there's conferences, psychedelic conferences going on, New York and other places, San Francisco or Oakland rather. So I thought, why isn't anyone doing anything in LA? So I thought, well, maybe we're supposed to do it. So, and that's how I mean, there's a lot of starts and stops and a lot of bumps on the road and a lot of, disappointments, but thankfully we stuck through with it. And 2018, we had the first conference at UCLA, which was a very big success. It was, we had McKenna, Gabor Mate, Charles, James Fadiman, Joe Tafur, just a whole who's who in psychedelics, as well as young up and comers and people that just had interesting research and it was mainly science based stuff. And so now, I left UCLA a couple of years ago just to put myself completely into Lamps, and we were going to have another conference. The second one was going to be at the Ace Theater in LA. I don't know if you've ever been there, but I think it was made around the 1920s. It just looks like it's tailor-made for psychedelics. It's just beautiful, beautiful theater. And of course, COVID ripped that rug from under us, and we had to do it online. But it was still a very good conference, and so now we're doing it again. This time we were going to have it at UCLA, but negotiations broke down. I won't go into the details of that. And so we just found a different venue, which I think it's much better for what we're trying to do. And that's at Above the Block in West LA. So
Nice.
I think I answered most of the question,
Yeah.
right? there's a lot more in there I could throw in, but
Yeah.
that's it for now.
Well, let's just, while we're on it, let's hear a little bit about what Lamps is. Like, what is it that you offer now? And then the symposium and like what the intention of having this kind of this group is.
Yeah, so right now we're trying to kind of not reinvent, but kind of flesh out more for Lamps, because primarily it was a lot of, well, first of all, it was the meetings that we had, and my colleague Paul Lacey would film them all, and so they're available to watch. And then it started changing. I used to work at Rancho Los Amigos. It's a research center in gerontology research, and they coined it as a research training and education. And I kind of like those three things. I'm interested in all three of them. So we're trying to flesh out all three of those. And we'll be launching our website. We never had a website for Lamps, so that's going to come out soon, and we'll highlight each of those areas, because I would love to do some Alzheimer's research, because that's the 10 years of gerontology research. And Jordi Riba, I don't know if you know of him, but he was one of the primary researchers in Spain for ayahuasca. And in the 2017 MAPS or Psychedelic Science Conference, one of the last slides he showed was ayahuasca for Alzheimer's with a question mark. And he talked about some of the reasons why it might be a good either slow down the progression or maybe even reverse it. So, and unfortunately, he died, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. So I didn't get a chance to work with him. But I would love to do something like a small pilot study, just to see, is there a signal? Is this worth pursuing? And also, both DMTs, I've heard anecdotal evidence that that might work as well. Someone gave it to his uncle who was in kind of the mid stages of Alzheimer's, and immediately there was an effect, but supposedly he had a reactivation at the airport, and when they got back, he remembered the whole trip, which he never would have done before because his short-term memory was not completely shot, but it was very much impaired. So yeah, I'd love to do something looking at that. That was 5-MeO, but I've heard other accounts of maybe even NN-DMT um, being there. So I'd love to research all that. As you know, big pharma's not going to fund that, so it's a little tricky getting funding. That's why starting out with a pilot study, even a case study or something like that, just to show something, and then maybe reach out to the Alzheimer's Association and say, hey, look, we'd like to do this bigger study, but we need money for it. So
Wow.
that's the research part of it. Education we've been doing all along. I love doing panels, Zoom panels. I love doing conferences. Um, and the one we have coming up that you mentioned, the Psychedelic Insights, is different from anything we've done before. And I'm not sure, I haven't seen anyone else do it, but I'm sure it's not a novel concept, but it's a series of 8 roundtable discussions. I love the concept of a roundtable as opposed to a panel of experts, just whatever. Just get more dialogue between the panelists. Get as usual, get a diverse group in there, diverse voices. So we got to have some medicine workers from Mexico coming up. We have a Peruvian shaman that we worked with in a pilot study in Peru coming up. We have Native American speakers, as well as LGBTQ representation and so forth. So really proud of it. It's 8 different topics. There's psychedelics and spirituality, mental health, physical health, death and dying process, legality, equity, and um, can't remember the third part of that. But and then it's been some changes as this has been morphing out. We're going to do one on psychedelics and reality, in quotes. I was trying to get people from the DMTX to come, and I wasn't successful in that. So we ended up changing that because one of someone working on the conference with me, Sarah, had a friend who she was telling him about the conference, and he was kind of got not angry, but kind of irritable. He goes, "Oh, is this just like every other conference where you go and everyone talks about stuff and nothing changes, and nobody talks about policy?" And so we had some discussions with him, and because he has, I guess, some connections in Congress, and so we thought, well, let's swap them out. Let's have one on policy change, and we'll have as many Congress men and women we can to come, and we're also going to get some attorneys, psychedelic attorneys, and just have that discussion, like what's going on, how can we as non-politicians help this process, how can we get involved, boots on the ground, and get active.
Hmm.
So very excited about that. And the last panel is just going to be like a go around to people just giving their impressions of kind of like a discussant, like just kind of bringing it all together, kind of integrating the conference, we would call it,
This is
and
great. Because I, by
yeah,
the way, I feel the same way. Um, I personally don't share this with anybody, those of you listening, but I get kind of bored at some of these conferences because it's a lot of it is, first of all, let's be honest, there's some pay to play going on. We all know about that, right?
yeah,
There's
yeah,
that. And if people don't know, feel free to look up and see what that means. But a lot of it is just kind of like researchers regurgitating, and I get it. This is what a conference is for, but some of us that are like maybe not in the pure research side or the scientific, doctorates only side, and want to go more into like the social aspect, the legalities, actually making change. And when I was at Psychedelic Science and we were on we had a separate leadership summit of our own, like Marisa and this crew, and I came out of it and it was great. We did like discussions and meet and greets, it was very like interactive, but I did come out saying like, okay, next time we do this, we need to come out with action points. Like, what can we now
yeah,
do? Like that's the one thing with these big conferences. They're great and it's great for networking, but yeah, like what is the whole point of coming together? And even policy, like it's interesting because there's there's so many different nuances and sides, and not everybody, we will name this, but not everybody in this space is for legality.
Yeah.
There's a lot of arguments against it. There's a lot of arguments for a different model. And that's where I'm really curious to know, like, are you bringing in knowingly, like, people on, both sides or all sides of these big topics? Or is it kind of like, oh, let's just make this all legal and bring everyone in?
Well, in terms of the politicians, it's we really don't have too much choice in the matter because it's fluidity of their schedules. So even though we
Mm,
could put them on the marquee, they might get swept, have to do something else. So we're going to invite as many as we can. We'll have two attorneys at least. And that's a good point. Maybe we should get someone, decrim versus legality or something like that, because I know it's a big topic. And
and does it
yeah,
also focus on California policy only, or is it more?
no, I think we're looking for people around the country, and I
Yeah.
think I'm not handling those letters. Person Sam is helping us out with that, so
Mm.
it's kind of like cast a wide net, see what we can get with that. Um, yeah. So I forget that it was another
Yeah, no,
part of the
I was
question or
just
another.
curious about, like, yeah, like bringing in different viewpoints. It's like I love that you're bringing in, indigenous peoples or natives,
Mm,
people from Peru or Mexico, or the, Native American,
yeah.
and to bring in people from maybe like both perspectives of, like, some are very, pro this, and some are very, like, oh, I don't care what goes on, and I'm just wondering if that's the point, is to facilitate like a kind of a discussion of, like, what are the different viewpoints, or is it more like, hey, we all believe in this, and, like, let's push this forward? I'm just curious because I've never been to a conference like this, and I've always dreamed of going to one like this.
Yeah. Well, people can go on the website and see. We have a list of questions that we came up. Just more suggestions for the moderator. I mean, they don't have to ask, and definitely they're not going to get through all of them. I should also add that the model is there's each roundtable is about an hour and a half, and when that one ends and the other one's coming up, they go to a breakout ballroom and continue that conversation for another hour and a half where the other one's going on. And everything's going to be
Right.
filmed, so no one has this fear of missing out, which I'm sure you felt at Psychedelic Science
Yeah.
just like I did, running around everywhere. Uh, so there's that aspect. So once they leave, they can even maybe get less formal and
That's
just
great.
dive into it.
Cool.
So yeah, and we're not looking. We didn't try to stack the deck for like everyone's going to talk about legalizing it. We want a good panel should have disparate voices. Which agree and disagree. We don't want to get too combative about it,
Yeah.
but if we can have a good discussion about it, it's good to have different. So it's like the elephant. The blind man feeling the elephant. It's like if you only feel the tail, you think an elephant's like a rope. So you got to get those disparate views and the different perspectives. So that's what we're aiming at. And of course,
That's great.
we just
Mm.
we have one Peruvian shaman coming, so he's not representing all of Peru, all of the shamans there. It's just
as
him.
as my friend says, she's like, you ask my, because she works with a group of shipibos together, and she's like, you ask one day and they'll say this, and then the next day the other will say this, and the other, and it's like, yeah, it's human nature.
Yeah, I,
One does
I
not represent the whole entire, lineage.
that was one good thing. I went down to. I don't know if you've ever been to the shamanism conference in Iquitos.
Mm-mm. I've
I
heard
went.
about it.
Yeah, I went to the ninth one, and one of the I don't know how to say highlights. One thing I really like what they did. Because in between they have three ceremonies you can go to throughout that week. Usually two ayahuasca and then a wachuma in the middle. And but at one point they had, I think they called it ask the shamans or something, and they had like four shamans that worked there, like they would, have people ask questions or submit questions, and they'd and it was really interesting to hear the differences. Even like people just working with ayahuasca, they'd have different viewpoints on things, and so
Yeah.
I really like that. And we don't have that built into this one, but maybe we could informally, we have breaks and stuff. We could have like during the 15-minute break, just ask the shamans or something. People it'd be really interesting. So
Love it.
Yeah.
Actually, if you want, or if you don't mind, I would love to actually circle back, just out of curiosity, as someone who worked in geriatric research, and then this work, because so I have a mother with dementia,
Mm.
and it is what it is. She's older, and but it is funny because someone I work with who's approving mestizo actually said, like, well, you should give her ayahuasca. And I was like, I actually was like, there's no way. My mom would never do that. I've tried giving her a microdose and didn't really, I mean, it wasn't bad. It didn't really seem to help though. So I gave up pretty quickly on that. But I'm
Mm.
curious, as someone who's done research, like what do you think the potential is it like with either ayahuasca and or the bufo, is it like a scientific like cell regeneration, or is it energetic? Like, I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts around what might be a possible help for something like this?
Well, that's a great question, and I think it would differ from like for 5-MeO. The person I told you about who gave it to his uncle. I think it was a pretty big dose, but something for like ayahuasca, and that's another thing Jordi Riba did that I was really impressed with, because he found a way to freeze dry the ayahuasca and encapsulate them. Because that's a big problem with ayahuasca research is that you have no idea. Everyone makes their brew differently. You have no idea the strength of it, and everyone's cup is like arbitrarily poured. So this way you could at least put it through the Terence McKenna would call it the torture chambers of science, and know what the dose is, and which is a start. So my idea was microdosing, like and I was even thinking of finding a place down south where it might be easier to do it, and still get an IRB from here to oversee it. But and you need a lot of time, right? That's I even brought this up to Rick Doblin one time, but he wasn't interested in it because it would just take too long. Because you need a control group that gets a placebo, and you need a group that gets these microdoses over time. You need and a big enough group in each set to make it statistically significant, which would be hard to do for the first thing. I think a pilot study just to show, is there a signal? Is there a strong enough signal? Is there a trend? So that was my idea of just microdosing, because putting someone mid stage or later through ayahuasca, I think would be very unethical. They wouldn't be able to consent to it, and I mean, who knows? It could be a beautiful experience. It could be nightmarish, and it's just not worth the risk. So I think microdosing would be the way to do that. And when I brought this up to Dennis McKenna, I was talking about it, and he goes, well, you could even do research in the United States just using the vine, because it's only the
Right.
chacruna that's
Right.
illegal. So, and there's a lot of properties with the vine that, MAO inhibitor, I think anti-inflammatory effects and whatnot, a lot of these different alkaloids. So it'd be
That's an
just
idea.
worth, yeah, maybe
Send my
try that.
mom some, have her caregivers like put, to put a tincture in her whatever she drinks, But
Or
yeah,
capsules,
that I mean, because I know, I mean, I never even followed up. You probably know way more about this than me. When I met Amanda Fielding back in like 2015, and I remember they funding a lot of research around LSD and Alzheimer's, and I was like, whoa. And I think
Interesting.
there's so much, right? Isn't there a lot happening around that research, or there was?
I haven't heard much about that, but I know it, Beckley and them, they're doing a lot of interesting things. That hasn't come through my radar yet. But
God,
are they finding good results with the LSD?
I mean,
Is
I
it
don't know whatever happened, and maybe it was just her own opinion. I don't know. She was very adamant that LSD was like the answer to figuring out what was really going on, and I don't know. I mean, I do have this even long before my mom had this dementia, because I've dealt with sister-in-law's father, and then stepfather, and of course all of us know someone. I have this dream that like we are going to find this answer in our lifetime, and there's more and more you know um ideas of like what it really is. I interviewed someone, if like, I don't know, 6 months ago, who was like, no, it's definitely this plaque, and here's how you cure it, and no, but I don't know if that's factual
Well,
100%.
that's been disproven now. I
Oh
don't know if you
yeah.
heard about that, but
uh,
they fudged the data for the plaque part, the beta amyloid plaques. So Yeah,
Well, and it was also I was interviewing like a hardcore biohacker medicine type, which, I'm all for, like, go crazy with the biohacks and, also, like, what's the point if it's not really proven to work, because then what other detrimental harm are we causing? I mean, who knows? This is all such a new territory, and some of these, like using certain substances that are new or certain biohacking methodologies that I don't know. We don't really know how this cold plunging is gonna go, that's a different story.
yeah,
But do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And that's a good point. And I mean, there's certain things that wouldn't cause harm, and it's like who knows if it does good, but like lion's mane,
yeah,
the neurogenesis from that, even microdoses of psilocybin,
yeah.
or I don't know if ketamine would be a good idea, but they say there's neurogenic properties for those too, and
Mhm.
it's
Fascinating.
just begging for research.
Yeah.
Even just just pilot studies just to get something going. And when I meet people, I always try to convince them to get data. I'll help you design something. That would be very easy. When we did the pilot study in Peru, it was easy because I just had we had symptom checklist 90, which is psychiatric measure that measures depression, anxiety, hostility. Just 9 different dimensions of psychiatric distress, and then we had an existential measure, which is based on Viktor Frankl's work. Um, and then we did follow-ups, and the follow-ups were done through SurveyMonkey. So we just gave them, a number, so they didn't put their name; it wasn't attached to their name, and they would just fill these out online. It's so simple to do, so inexpensive. So people should be doing it more. Well, should, but
Should, yeah.
it'd be great if people did it more. And I've talked to some people who have stuff going down in South America, and they get excited about it, but then for whatever reason, it just isn't followed through. So
Yeah.
I might push out a little bit more with some of people I know down there.
Oh, that
Yeah,
that'd be said. Yeah, I wanted to ask about this is like kind of looking into like kind of citizen science research. Are you doing any of this or are there people working on more initiatives like this? And here's the big question. Of course, you probably know this well. It's like, well, let's see who funds most research and like where's there, if there's not a profit to be made by somebody, then, who's going to put in all this time and energy and effort. But
yeah,
then maybe if there's something that's like community driven or
hmm,
people who genuinely just care or like a reporting system or something like that, like
yeah.
what do you know, like what's going on out there? Are you working on anything like this or
No, that I'm want to work on it. I mean, after this conference, I think I might focus more on that. In fact, I've talked to people at USC. 'Cause I gave a talk there a while back, and I made friends with someone who's now retired but interested in doing research. And I pitched the idea of Alzheimer's thing. He's really excited about that because I guess Norris, the hospital there, there's people interested as well. So, and then I worked at UCLA almost 20 years, and I know people there. So I thought it'd be really interesting to see if we can, I'm. It's really hard to do these things like herding cats, getting a collaborative thing like this going. But how cool would that be? USC and UCLA working together with lamps. And I used to work at Rancho, which has this great gerontology center. So, and physicians who work specifically with dementia patients. And so, if we could pull that off, some sort of collaborative thing, I think that'd be a great start. And people are interested. I mean, like my mom had dementia as well. And she passed, and I it's hard to not run into someone who doesn't know somebody. And I'm a tail end of the baby boomers, and I know the baby boomers are very concerned about especially if they see their own parents or other people go through it. It's just
Mhm.
it's not it's a horrible thing in so many ways.
Yeah.
So anything to do to slow down the progression, or reverse it, God, wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah.
Is worthwhile. So that's why yeah, definitely want to. And when we get more serious about or are ready to jump into that, I'm going to reach out to other researchers and especially experts in the field. We had someone, I forget his last name, Dralio. I forget his last name now, but he was in our first conference, and he's well versed in Alzheimer's research. And So I might reach out to him now that Jordi Reba isn't available, but just see who's out there doing stuff. Maybe someone at Beckley's doing this. Amanda Fielding, I don't know. And I'd be interested to talk to her too about LSD and like why she thinks that would be it. Because
She's a trip.
yeah, that doesn't have anti-inflammatory as far as I know. So I wonder what the mechanism is that she's expecting that to work. Maybe it does. Maybe it would.
And
But
that was like in a casual conversation in 2015, and maybe she's changed her mind, but she was a very big fan of LSD, and I'm the same way where it's like, really, out of all the substances? But
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe because I personally, as someone who's kind of, bridging work in this space, I cannot even keep up with the research. I mean, it's like you're either
Mhm.
really into the research or you're like, you eventually you'll hear about it, but it's like there's just so much moving and there's, so much coming through, and it's like I can't even keep up with it all. I mean, I can't even following what's going on in Oregon, like, yeah, I have the gist, like I know the basics, but or things that change, or Colorado, or the movement in California. It's like, oh my God, there's so much, and it's moving so rapidly and
Yeah.
so dramatically sometimes, like one to the other to the other.
Yeah.
Um, and you're right there in the epicenter, which is so funny because I grew up in California, and I always blame the fact that I started doing drugs at 14 years old. I always say it's because I grew up in California. I was I was outside of San Francisco, and of course there was acid around like when I was 14. But I'm curious, like as someone who's been really kind of immersed in LA, and those that know, I would say all over California, but especially in LA, there's like it's just like very popular, I guess is a way to put it.
Mhm.
But what are your views on like where the whole kind of psychedelic and medicine scene and interest has come from over the years, and like where is it going, and like has it, some people say it's like, oh, it's kind of like the hype is softening, and I'm like, is it? I don't know. Is it
Mhm.
just kind of reaching a, like the mainstream acceptance? Like what is your view, especially coming from like where you are, like LA?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just to address the first point is like it's like I think I'm pretty up on it. Obviously running lamps and you see on Facebook, I'm posting a lot, but
Mhm.
it's kind of the thing. Like the more the more you don't know. Like I had a conversation with Dennis McKenna about that. He was asking my wife and I at the time what we got out of ayahuasca. And so we're saying, oh, there's this, that, all these good things. And my wife at the time asked him the same question, and he goes, well, sometimes the divine will tell him, "You don't know shit." And for him, that was the big boon. It's like just a humbling of you know a lot in some sense, but there's a lot so much more you don't know, which I think is very healthy for our the psychedelic communities. Just there's so much hubris and narcissism and all sorts of weird things going on where people the Dunning-Kruger effect. Like people the vine tells them that you're a shaman. It's like,
Oh my
oh
God.
my God, I'm a shaman. I'm sure we could talk about that.
Oh my God, that one.
Yeah, but yeah, in terms of like the Renaissance or the community, like and I've heard people say there's no one community, there's no psychedelic community. There's communities and there's different motivations and we were talking about this a little earlier before you came on. It's like there's people drawn to this for the money, the power, the control, the more nefarious things, and there's people who come in with good intentions. And this is there's a whole spectrum of why people are in this field, and I come across people on each part of the spectrum, which you can talk about later if you want. So, but yeah, I'm sure it's maybe similar with you. It's like back in 2011, and there's like this renaissance. It was just amazing. I mean, for the first, I went to Maps 2013, and it was just like, oh my God, people are talking in the open about this and these results. And like the first thing I saw was the Mythoffers talking about, their MDMA research with, veterans and people with PTSD. And I was like, this is my tribe, and at that point, it was like, oh my God, I'm all in. This is the future. It's going to change psychology and medicine, and I think that's still true. But as you said, I think the hype is now kind of it's like, okay, we got this plateau. Everyone, it's getting out there, and I think it should still get out there, all the positive stuff, but we also need to look at the negative, because every yin has a yang, uh, and we need to look back in the 1960s too and make sure we don't run into that same iceberg that they did, which I see us kind of heading that direction in
Hmm.
certain ways. So it's really important to look at the dark side. In fact, our second conference was, examining the light and shadow. Because like,
Hmm.
yeah, let's look at the great stuff where you can help people with depression, all this sort of stuff. Let's look at the negative stuff that yeah, I mean, everyone and their dog now. Well, that's kind of a mean way to put it, but
Sure.
so there's so many ketamine clinics popping up, and I think that's great in one sense. I think I know people who said they would have committed suicide without it if they hadn't gotten it, and but I see so much bullshit and just harm
Hmm.
with it. People, and there's no real tight standard that people are working from. I know there's some that they have to, but I just see people just constantly on the lozenges or getting infusion after infusion, and they seem to be getting worse. And especially if they're not working with a good psychologist to kind of integrate these experiences and find someone with the IFS training to work with the parts and all sorts. During that, it's just like not to. I don't think I can get open myself up to lawsuits by saying this, but
I was literally saying this to a friend this morning, by the way, literally. Because I,
yeah,
I actually, just for the record, it's funny. I, think I've platformed maybe 3 people, but I'm kind of like I won't even platform people about ketamine anymore. That's kind of how strongly I feel. I mean, because again, I do believe it's great for, I'm not denying that it's super helpful for if it's used in the right context in the right way.
hmm,
But from my own experience of now hearing from clients who are then dealing with people who are like, yeah, I have clients who are doing, mail order ketamine and they're doing it every single week and they
yeah,
don't have any support. And that's why they came to me. And, then there's some negative experience, it's like, and not to say negative is wrong, that's okay, but if people are just doing ketamine once a week as their therapy, but then they don't have actual therapy or integration or any kind of support, then how is it much different than taking Prozac every day or
yeah.
doing any drug? I mean, let's be honest, ketamine feels great. Like, of course, why not do it once a week? But, then there's some harm, then there's actual physical dangers, and I don't know. I think it's gotten a little like, um, you know, I don't know what the right word is, misused or a little out of hand.
Abused, yeah,
Yeah.
and any people that go in for the weekly treatment, or they, they'll end up getting them on by their own, and they'll just take it more often. And I don't know if you saw the Vice piece they did on ketamine, but in I think it was in somewhere in England, but just it's pretty horrifying. People who got like taking like maybe 3 grams a day or something like that. It's like, first of all, how the hell do
Mm.
you afford that? But the guy wasn't the peak of health. He's obviously very much adversely affected by it,
Mhm.
and that's something that needs to be highlighted. Just the dangers of it.
Yeah.
Early on, and with lamps, we had a MD coming in who had a clinic. I won't name him name, but people are. He didn't talk anything about the negative, and like people are asking, well, is it addictive? He goes, no, no, it's
Oh
not
yeah.
addictive,
Well,
and it
I don't
depends on how
agree.
you. Yeah,
People have said it's
yeah,
not addictive since I was a teenager, since I was doing K, as like a raver. It's super addictive. I mean, it's like psychologically and everybody who, I mean, I'll say that as someone who's done it a fair amount. It's like, yeah, of course you want more. It feels great.
yeah,
That's
yeah, and I know people, friends who've gotten very seriously addicted to it, and to the point where their organs are starting to show. That's why people should see the Vice thing, because.
wow.
And also, I saw something recently about people who chronically abuse it. I mean, these are heavy users, granted, but brain lesions show up.
Oof.
So
Wow.
who knows? Lighter doses might be okay and stuff, and maybe it's actually good for the brain neurogenesis. But a lot more research needs to be done, and we need to look at the shadow stuff more,
Yeah.
and not just paint a rosy picture like oh, you're depressed, do this. It's like there's a lot more to it there, and the integration process is kind of important. If you got depressed because you're doing things that aren't good for you, then maybe think about changing those, not just going in and getting your infusion once a week.
Mhm.
Make lifestyle changes,
Yeah.
which isn't I see a lot of people not stressing that enough, which is not
Yeah,
good.
is that I'm curious, is that what's like kind of the vibe? Like when you said the iceberg direction,
Mhm.
what's your because I always ask people like, do you feel positive or like are we going in a positive direction for the greater good of healing of the planet? Or is it gonna have to get really messy first? Or, like what 'cause I kinda go back and forth between, like there are
Yeah,
some weeks where I'm like, "Oh my god, like, I don't even wanna be part of this anymore," and then there's some weeks where I'm like, "Oh, this is great," like, it's
yeah,
the larger picture of, like, healing, and there's gonna be some victims in the process, but, what are your views on this iceberg?
yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting. I use it because again, it's not just one movement. I think it's a lot of different components. You have the above ground, the clinics and people, doing MDMA either through research or whatever. Then you have the underground, which is a whole different animal, and the regulation there is like, uh, yeah, I'd love to talk about that if we have time too, because I think
Non-existent.
that's,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, there's nothing like a board of psychology or medicine to regulate, standards of practices and actually mete out some sort of disciplinary action when someone is, does sexual abuse or harm in other ways. And if we want to avoid the iceberg, we need to find out a way to regulate ourselves as a community so the DEA and cops don't have to come in and go to the Supreme Court, which I don't want to get too political, but I don't trust that Supreme Court to make a right
Oh my
decision.
god.
Maybe they would, but I'd hope they would. But who wants that? And that question itself is interesting because I know of people I won't mention, but who do want that because they want to be the David going up against Goliath, and they themselves are doing bad things. And again, I don't want to get
Mm.
sued. I'm not going to mention any names, but
On
uh,
purpose to be able to, like, stick it to the man and go and fight or
kind of just like the limelight. Think about they want to
Mm,
be the what, Clarence Darrow or some big get a lot of accolades,
mm,
get
yeah,
a praise for that, and just which is dangerous. And so it depends on what you're talking about. I think the above ground stuff. We have what maps. With the whole thing with the Lycos and that whole decision. That's different. So this above ground, there's things they're kind of Ouija boarding our way forward in all different directions, but it's we're hitting a lot of bumps and a lot of setbacks. It's just follow the news, you can see those. And then there's the whole underground, which I mentioned, a whole different set of problems. And that's why I want to get more dialogue between the community leaders. I know that GPS, Global Psychedelic Society, is working on that kind of stuff. And I've talked to other people who are also like the Conclave. I think has discussions. So I'd like to get groups together, just have a kind of a fishbowl discussion, free to the public, and people from around the world too, like the Berlin Psychedelic Society. Just get people, just have this big, like what's going on in your country, and just we have a lot of the same ideas. Like we like develop a council, a well-rounded council. Hopefully have some elders in there, just representation from different
mhm,
folks, and then someone mentioned like having an ombudsman who take like let's say I'm on for this week. So anything that comes through the portal, whatever, the email, I would handle that. And if it's something that I could handle by myself, I would do it. If it's something that's higher up, then bring it to the council and have a discussion. Just some sort of structure like that. I think there's no real teeth in the system. Uh, like the board of psychology, they can discipline you and take away your license, stuff like that. Underground, I can mention this because it's public knowledge, but I don't know if you've seen the public letter that came out about Jerry Sandoval and Octavia Reddick.
oh,
You didn't see that?
a new one or from way back?
This is from way back.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, oh,
yeah,
yes, I
yeah.
know
The
very
whole
well,
list of
yes,
stuff,
yeah,
and who knows how much good that did. I don't think it did too much good. I mean, well, it's hard to
I wouldn't
measure.
work with them, but yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
mean, everyone knows I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people know the name of, like,
yeah.
you know, but
Well, and Jerry was just on what a Vice thing not too long ago. He's just doing whatever he's been doing.
mm,
I don't know what Octavia's up to. Hopefully he's not shocking people or kicking them in the nuts or waterboarding them anymore, which is,
I shouldn't
I,
laugh, but yeah.
yeah, it's abhorrent, and I don't care what he says about his rationales. Like, the guy's a drug addict, he needs to get kicked in the balls. It's like,
Mm.
no. Can you imagine me on 5 on
Oh
Bufo
my God.
and getting yelled at and
It's already
shocked?
traumatizing enough to just work with Bufo in general.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't
And
need the
so,
extra.
but that was like the only thing I saw going out that had, any sort of teeth, or if it did have teeth. I
Mm,
mean, at least it got the message out, and people say, maybe I shouldn't
mhm.
see this provider, or maybe I should find out more before I do. Um, but yeah, so and then there's a whole psychedelic church thing, that's another way of legally dispensing these, and there's a lot of bullshit going on there too,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and a lot, and that's what I'm really concerned about is you have Soul Quest, just that, and there's other places I won't mention
Yeah.
for obvious reasons.
It's probably the same ones I know.
Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
you do.
Well, because I mean, it's amazing how many people have asked me, like, have you heard of this place? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I've only heard bad things, but they're a legal
Yeah,
church, you know? I mean, there's many of them because there's a
yeah.
few. There's a few I know that are totally legal and I wouldn't recommend them, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's. I mean, they call it a church, but how many churches, mail, like the Catholic Church mail you the little wafers in the mail so you can take them at home, yeah, outside of the context of any sort of churchly thing? And the answer is no. The Catholic Church doesn't do that. I don't. So I think there should be a little more standard in terms of people calling themselves a church, and what does that entail? What are the guidelines for that?
Mm,
And so there's all those different areas: underground, above ground. The churches, the research centers, people doing ketamine clinics legally and stuff like that. So, but each of those areas has a yin and a yang, has the good and the not so good parts. And I think, especially now, I think it should be, if not equally, balanced. Just I would like to go. Well, maybe not, but I'd like to see some, like, just a whole conference on just the negative stuff. I don't know if people go to that, but just to get that out there, maybe as a one-day salon, or just maybe even just a panel. I don't know. It's so worthwhile to talk about, because um, there's there's so much damage that's happening out there. I mean, especially
yeah.
with these providers that uh, the sexual assault is just rampant, and not just in underground. We hear about just in
Yeah.
legitimate, quote unquote, legitimate settings. So it's a big problem. We need to find better ways of dealing with it. A lot of that is like, what is the path to redemption? What's the mediation process? And I've never been part of any of those mediation things, like with the whole thing with Francoise, but I heard that people just weren't satisfied with the way it went. I don't know if you are up on what happened with that, but
Which one? Because,
I guess it was something like, yeah, like public talks about it.
hmm.
And I shouldn't say too much because I don't know the detail, but I talked to someone who was part of that, and he just said, it just wasn't satisfactory to. I mean, people were just pissed off afterwards, and
All I know
um,
is, I interviewed her and was supposed to release the interview like literally that same week that the news came out. So then I didn't release the interview, but what was interesting is that if what was that 3.5 years ago now, 3 years ago, wasn't that 2021?
about that, yeah,
Yeah. I feel like it's been radio silence. I mean, once in a while you'll hear a little blip out of their organization, but I was like, wow, they just like, I don't know. I mean, there's been very little.
yeah,
And I've heard the opposite side of the story too. Like, oh, well, some of her supporters, and because I actually just had this discussion with someone yesterday, is like, well, can we envision councils, like a
yeah,
kind of a healthier way to handle this? Like,
yeah,
not just, because what I'm seeing, and you're probably seeing this too, or maybe you're seeing more than I'm seeing, but I see the people they go into hiding and kind of brush it under the rug and hope that people forget. That's
yeah,
one strategy, because I actually know there's a bunch of people who've done that,
mhm,
and I witnessed them, and I'm like, oh, there they are, and a whole bunch of people don't even know about this. So
yeah,
there's that, like, let me just hide and people will forget. And then there's the other, which is like, we can cancel them so hard that their whole entire lives are ruined, and now their entire livelihood, and they're never able to practice again. which
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe is okay, but maybe not, because then that's not really a healthy way of dealing with it either. Because that it's like, how are we learning, or how is
Yeah.
anyone learning from like, what went wrong, what could have gone right, like where was there a disconnect, and then, because I don't know if sometimes it's always just one person was malicious. Like, there's a lot of nuances to some of these stories. I mean, yeah, obviously if it's like blatant sexual abuse, it's one thing, but there's some other stories that are kind of like, like how much of this is someone who just didn't like the facilitator or didn't get the kind of attention or care that they wanted,
Yeah.
versus like flat out harm is another story. But like, this is where I wonder about, like, like you said, like best practices, councils, pure led accountability, which I know, who is it, like, because Allison Hoots I know was part of, what is it, the plant medicine, there's one plant medicine group that's doing this, like kind of like a peer reporting system, but it's kind
Oh yeah.
of, I think it's like a little limited still.
Hmm.
And I've thought about this too, because I even, in the role I'm in, I get numerous stories all the time of just random people telling me things. And most of the time, I don't even know who it is they're telling me about. It's just, oh, so and so in Texas or whatever. And I thought about this. I'm like, do we do like an anonymous reporting site, like a Reddit? Reddit itself kind of works that way. I
Yeah.
don't know, because it's just like, oh, how do we figure this out?
That is a tough question, and like when I had a bad experience with the group, uh, I didn't put it uh, publicly in lamps because I thought, again, the not just the legality part, but just other reasons too. But I also felt like I had a duty to warn. It's like, I I have a PhD in psychology. That's ingrained in me. It's like duty to warn, and especially being head of lamps, just feel like I need to get something out there. The what the way I handled it was just I'd reach out to other community leaders and just tell them my experience. Say, your miles may vary. I just feel like I have a duty to warn, and most everyone's been very grateful for that because they
Mm,
know these people and they're a little more cautious. But I've talked to many other people too about the idea of a blacklist, and again that there's problems having that be public. That could be up
yeah.
for discussion because again, innocent people could, just someone didn't like you, like, and I've
Yeah.
talked to different facilitators where I'd have to talk to both parties, and I was like, yeah, it does sound like it was more of them and whatever. It was just hard determination to make, but
Yeah, because
um,
that's some of the stories I've been hearing over the years are just, like how much of this is someone's just one person's experience or even two
yeah,
people. Like I have a person I work with who I love, and I have some good friends that are like, "Oh, I can't stand him." And
mm,
I'm like, "Why?" And they're just like, "Oh, we don't like his," they just don't like it.
yeah,
There's never anything that's gone wrong. And I'm
Eh,
like, well, but they would like, they're kind of, like, I would never recommend him to anybody. But then, there's a huge group of people that love him. So then it's like, well, would that person make this blacklist? How many then does it actually help anybody, or is it causing actually more harm by, damaging someone's reputation in life when they're actually doing pretty good work, and maybe just it doesn't vibe with someone's ways.
right. Well, yeah, I have a couple examples just to come up with fresh, because and every time we do a conference or even some panels, like we try to vet people as well as we can, but there's only so much you can do. So
Mhm.
we platformed or had people up that it wasn't until it's up there that we get calls or say, hey, did you know so and so did this? And it's like,
Yeah.
no, I didn't know that. It's like and there's already a platform where you got tickets sold, and so then you have to make the uncomfortable call, and
Yeah.
ask the questions and then make the determination. And I think even a set of guidelines for that would be, good. I mean, I don't think you'd
Yeah.
ever go by one person like, oh, they served me bufo and I flipped out and they're terrible. That could be true. Maybe they are terrible, but if you get multiple, accounts from different people, they're
Yeah.
not connected, and it's not a concerted effort to bring someone down, then that's heavier evidence than just
Yeah.
one person, saying, they reminded me of my brother and I hate my brother, something like that,
Totally.
you know, uh, and it would also be helpful, and maybe GPS and some of these groups have this already, but just like a flow chart of how to handle, like
Mm,
if this, because this one person who he wrote a big book too. He's very popular, and but heard these disturbing accounts of misconduct.
mm,
So my colleague at the time, helping with this, we said, okay, well let's call, well confront and just get their side of the story, and maybe if it looks like it, we can offer them some sort of path of redemption. I was thinking it would, I mean, it's pie in the sky thinking. I was thinking if he would on the podcast or whatever, confess and do a
mhm.
mea culpa and have this be a teaching and learning experience,
Yeah.
that might be really, really good, and that, but it took like 1 minute into it where that was off the table because there was
Mm.
no sense of responsibility. I mean,
Oh,
blame it on the client,
it's a
it was like,
flag. Yeah.
yeah, so that was,
Mm,
at that point it's like, okay, he's out, because
yeah.
he didn't deny it, but he just is like deflecting the blame on, where
Oh, yeah.
it's like, dude, you know as well as anyone that there's a code of conduct, and it's you don't do what you did to your client, period. Because the client
Mm,
was very damaged by it and seen uh, different therapists to undo the damage that was done.
mhm,
So yeah, it's nuanced, and but I think some are more clear cut. Like that was a clear cut case, at least in my mind and my colleagues' mind. Is um, but Paul Lacey, who's been with Lamps from the beginning, we've had to make so many of these calls together, and just recently for this, the insights thing, we had to do some uncomfortable stuff, calls, and even though we thought we did our due diligence. So it's, there's no foolproof method, but I think that the more safeguards we have in, um, for instance, like our platform, people, and we still have their recordings up, and later down the road, it sounds, like Francois has been both of my conferences or Lamps conferences. I'm not going to take it down because I think what she did was
mm.
great, but then again, there's that line, like
Oh, yeah.
if it was much worse, at what point, you probably know the whole Civil War we got into with the Martin Ball thing, right?
Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah, and because Symposia was like, had the sights on Mark Hayden first, and then they saw, oh, Martin Ball wrote the foreword. Let's look. Then they found the Lamps thing they had, which we had up, and so I got a call from them, and I think they're trying for a threefer, take us all three down at the same time, which was, real shame. I'd love to maybe talk to some people from Symposia at some point, just to, especially, yeah, I don't know how much. Yeah, I have invited them. We tried to get like and we couldn't agree to terms of engagement. So it's like, okay, I guess we're not going to talk about this as human beings
Wow.
without throwing name
Yeah.
calling, and even recently, David Nichols, who was the one person, I was going to do something for Entheo Nation. I was going to be on this dismantling the patriarchy, the psychedelic patriarchy. They had three women on. They wanted to get a male perspective. So, I thought, I think I do a good job at that. I share a lot of, I call myself a feminist in many ways. Grew up with three older sisters. I really respect women, and so thought I'd be a good fit for that. And he put one of the other speakers posted something about it, and you see my face. He goes, "Oh, I don't think Brad Adams should be on this because he's a Martin Ball apologist," and it was guilt by association. Yeah,
Wow.
and so I actually talked to one of the. We had a Zoom call with the person whose wall it was posted on, and we had a conversation about it, and you know, very deep. I think, I don't know about her, but I was on the verge of tears, talking about this stuff, and I think she was too. It was very moving and stuff. But I just decided to recuse myself because I didn't want to, cause problems or whatever.
Yeah.
But I would like to maybe invite uh, those three panelists just to redo it, and maybe get two males, we get three and three, and just have a dialogue that way with it. Because for him to go lay a turd right in the middle of it, and just like,
That's
yeah, I
but
don't want to
that's
say too
like
much.
It's this world I know because I've come up. I've actually asked about this on many different podcasts interviews because when I had to choose to I mean, I turned to a friend in the industry and I said, this interview with Francois was actually really good and she's done some really good work and written a great book. And this was right when the accusation came out. And so I didn't really know. But then I pulled it and I was like, well, wait, where is there room for discussion?
Yeah.
Um, and like you just said, like if someone's in full denial and deflecting complete onto like, oh well, it's all their fault, and then they're not even open to their taking their own responsibility, then okay, well, that's one thing. But what if, there was someone recently who is kind of canceled, who's barely even in the psychedelic space, but they pulled psychedelics into it because, they were like doing ketamine or whatever. I contacted the guy to hear his side of the story because I was like, look, you're being crucified on Instagram right now, but like I'm curious what really happened. And of course, there were many nuances. And this is where I was like, well, where is the room for like counsel, like the Martin Ball discussion, like
Hmm.
even other discussions, it's like a lot of it is personal. Like if again, if someone's doing blatant harm, it's one thing, but if it's like maybe certain practices or certain modalities or certain methodologies, certain ways they approach things, and like yeah, some people don't agree with it, but is that a reason to like then hang them or crucify them everywhere? And that's kind of where I'm like, well, we're never all going to agree on the way things should be done. It's like I said,
Right.
like one of the shaman that I work with in Peru, like close friends of mine like don't like him at all, and I'm like, well, the guy's been really great for me, it doesn't
Yeah.
mean I'm going to like him forever, but do you know what I mean? And it's like I try to envision this world of like how can we all be adults and just have conversations and try to come out with like yeah, like yeah, kind of like the global psychedelic standard practices, or like I know there's like the North Star Code of Ethics and all these other organizations have tried things like that, but like something that we can at least all agree on. Because I'm like you, I have said this for years, like all we need are a few really bad cases to then like halt, like even what we just witnessed with MDMA. It's like, why wasn't it approved? I don't know. There's various reasons, but maybe, well, that's a whole other story of like what happened in the research. But this is where it's like, well, if together as a worldwide community, or at least a community in the US, and like you said, it's not a one community, but like the people working in this space, if there was a way to come up with something where then it doesn't go to the Supreme Court, where it doesn't go
Yeah.
to the mass media that then demonizes, like even that thing with like the pilot on mushrooms, is like the way the media handled it. I was like,
Yeah.
things like this are just so bad for the movement. I mean, I don't even,
Yeah.
that's like, so because I'm more of the like everybody is human, no one's going to be perfect, and there is a way with education and counsel and community held, like you're held accountable by this larger community, you're going to think twice before you make the moves on your whatever ceremony participant or whatever else
Right.
people are doing out there.
Right.
But maybe I'm also like an optimist and who believes that people do have the capacity to be good. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is just like you said, like blatant narcissism, and psychedelics just increases their ways of being more selfish, narcissistic, egotistical. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think part of it is, and part of the thrust of Lamps is to create safe space for these dialogues to happen, for these conversations, and
Yeah.
I'm still open to I was kind of joking with one of my colleagues. I'd like to have a series, or maybe just one panel, like just bring all my enemies and frenemies in one thing, and just let's talk it out.
Yeah, that'd be so fun.
Yeah, I mean, maybe one on one, so I'm not tag team. But it's interesting. Like sometimes the enemy of my enemy is my friend type of thing. Like I'll see, like Symposia is doing what they should be doing and going after the bad guys, and it's like, yeah, you go, but don't try to bring down people for no reason, or just to get sensational
Yeah.
clicks.
Well, that's
Yeah.
the other piece of it. Because I again I think I handled it well, but like someone who's also a writer in the space posted something that was like very clickbaity. And
Mhm.
I will say the comments on the post were like largely everybody saying like, this is pure clickbait. Like, what are you doing? There's
Yeah.
this has been so much of a positive modality, and here you are writing this article with like this headline that
Yeah.
it just like demonizes. And I said, look, like, I respect you and the work you're doing. I'm like so grateful you're doing it. And some of the things you write are just like really off, and you can tell they're like, and that's where there's this deeper issue of like, well, there's money and everything, there's people wanting the fame and fortune, there's
Yeah.
people's livelihoods. And this is where, if there's a way to do like maybe like a pre-conference or during conference, like separate conference, where we can just have like a gigantic space of just friendly adult like ideas, and it's not to like
Yeah.
bash each other, but to like just see
Yeah.
what's possible.
Well, Beth, I mean, I assume you're going to Denver next year, right?
Who knows? I know everybody's asking. I'm like, oh my god, that's like almost what, 11 months away? Probably, but we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, last time I got an Airbnb, we had 16 people,
Oh my god.
and I mean, not to bash the conference, but we almost enjoyed that more than the
That I know,
conference.
that's the thing. I had more fun at the pre-activity and like these kind of social things than the conference. I mean, honestly, I don't even do much at the conference because it was just so overwhelming. So I agree. Like, that's why like the whole psychedelic leadership summit that they organized was fun. And I'm like, I could definitely see like these little, if you got together like something, and please let me know if you need help organizing or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I've talked to other people about this too, is like doing kind of separate fun conferences, like kind of
Hmm.
community conferences, or like you said, like an all shadow conference. I'd be totally into that because
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can't pretend it doesn't exist. It's there.
Yeah, yeah, we see the brighter the light, the darker the shadow too. It's like
Yeah.
you see that all over. But well, as I mentioned that, maybe we could pitch that as a possible panel thing. Just
Oh, that'd be great.
invite as many community leaders as we can, and have it be a fishbowl type thing. And
That would be actually more interesting than, because some of these talks that I went to, it was like they only had like 15 minutes on stage, and it's like, I'm like, did
yeah,
I learn anything in psychedelic science? Not really.
oh, yeah, I'm assuming you missed my panel, right?
I missed I went to like three things I wanted to go to, and the rest was like, I mean, it took like 30, 40 minutes just to get from one talk to the
I
other.
know, I
And then
know.
you'd run into people, and it was like, oh my God, I can't even get anywhere. But
Or
yeah,
is it like
maybe.
it wasn't like 14,000 too or something, and now they want to double it next year. So
No.
can you imagine 28,000? Just like
Oh my
uh,
god, it'll have to be 2 weeks, but,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
this
but
is why I'm glad you're having, like I keep saying, the smaller conferences, or the kinda more community, or like the specific ones that are doing around like certain subjects.
mhm.
And I love what you're doing, which actually I wanna, leave you some space to shout out, what you're up to in this conference, because I actually have to run onto another call, but,
Okay,
and we'll have all your links, and if you have any promo things, please let me know. Because
yeah,
it's October, right? We still have,
yeah, October
yeah.
19th and 20th, and also I should mention that's we we got a Malibu retreat center, which is like four different little properties and beautiful. It's not near the ocean, but it's in the hills. Gorgeous. So we got that for all the speakers and staff. Very expensive. So we're going to have on Friday before the conference. It's going to be all day of workshops. So we're going to do is like maybe 15 or 20 workshops. Um,
Wow.
so there's that, and so people are,
Fun.
yeah, and those will be good. So if they go to lamps.org, and you'll have it in the discussion, but it's two S's. Just remember lampss.org. Uh, so we do have a promo code, insights, all caps, 2024. I don't know if I gave that to you before, but you can get a discount, just listeners for here.
Cool.
Um, yeah, and you get tickets from lamps.org. We also, it's through Eventbrite as well. And let's see what else. I know I'm supposed to say more. Probably forget about.
What kind
Yeah.
of, are these going to be workshops for people who like work in the space, or? Just
It
of
could be,
interest?
yeah, it's a wide variety. The website right now, we don't have them all listed. We try to get them up as soon as possible. But it's, wide variety of. Some people talk about cultivation. Some people talk about integration. Just all these different things. And the thing you mentioned too about these smaller things. Someone mentioned that instead of these big conferences, which a lot of work and a lot of them are going in the red. I'm hoping we don't end up in the red. I hope this, at least break even. We're not in this for money, but I
Yeah.
just want to get it out there. But he suggested doing like a salon, like just a full day salon thing, which maybe like a half day thing, just on integration. Maybe one on. I want to do a conference on psychedelic churches, but maybe just a salon on that.
Mm,
It'd be easier, more affordable, easier for people just to
yeah.
do one day. So that there's that. Um,
It's another problem with these conferences. I'm like, whoa. I mean, I get it if you're a professional and you can write it off, but a lot of people are just enthusiasts, and it's like expensive to go to psychedelic science for, 7 days, 8 days, or whatever.
yeah, yeah, everything built. I mean, so we try to keep our tickets, small enough so people can afford it. We will open it up to single day tickets as we get further down, and maybe open it up to like simulcasting. But probably won't do that till later. Simulcasting is also for couldn't get a lot of the same people who came to the first conference that because they're getting older and like
Yeah.
traveling is just harder. They're busy,
Yeah.
so and we didn't want to have too much the simulcasting stuff. But now that we have these um, Congress people. So one person said they would be happy to do it if it was simulcast. They could pipe it in through Zoom or something. So I think we're going to set that up for that, and maybe even invite like say like Des McKenna couldn't come. Just say, hey, would you mind just saying hello, pop in, or say
Yeah.
something,
Yeah. Totally.
something like that.
Cool.
Um,
Great.
yeah, yeah, and I know we didn't get to a lot of the things that.
I know, I know. We'll have to bring you back on to talk about psychedelics and prism reform because that's
Yeah,
fascinating to me. But this is honestly, this conversation is very alive for me because I mean, literally, what was it last week? I can't even keep up. Oh, I know. I mean, this is how bad it is. I can't keep up with which thing I posted about, but someone mentioned like their shaman sexual blah blah blah, and he said won't do it again. And but it's, by the way, it's someone like here in your neck of the woods too. And I was like, oh my god. And so I
yeah,
posted like, and the girl posted this publicly on my Instagram, so it's not like I'm divulging information, but I took a screenshot and I posted it on my Insta story, and like the amount of comments, like it's like this is every week there's something. And I said it's like getting kind of like more and more and more.
yeah,
And I'm just kind of, I keep trying to explore like, well, what do I even do with this? I don't even know half the people that people are talking about.
yeah,
Some of them are totally underground, and it's like it's interesting for me to know, because then if someone asks me like, have you heard of this person, do you recommend them, I can say like, well, here's what I've heard. But most of the
yeah,
time it's not even at that level. So this has been very alive, and I'm glad we had this talk, because
yeah,
if you ever do anything, or if you ever spearhead some kind of project, please get me involved. I would love to help out how I
yeah.
can. I just think there's got to be a way. There's got to be a better way.
Yeah, well, I've been saying it for a while too. We just need one William Wallace to unite the tribes and just start it. I haven't been wanting to do it because my plate's pretty full. But
Yeah,
after the conference, maybe I'll take that on, and
I know.
because people are saying like it should be funded as well, because people
Yeah,
yeah, I'm sure you know as well as I do. People get all excited until there's boots on the ground
I
time, and
know.
it's like run away.
That's that's
But if it's
exactly it. Like we all have great ideas, and everybody's like
yeah,
too busy, not enough money, need money. No, no, no. I get it. It's like,
yeah, again, Pfizer is not going to fund something like this, so we'd have to look at benevolent donors or
yeah.
or
Or
some sort of grassroots
every
fundraising.
every ceremony you go to, you must add $25 and donate. I mean,
Yeah,
someone tried
yeah,
that. That didn't work out very well. I mean, there's so many ideas, but who knows? Maybe one day this can. I do have faith in this global medicine world. I do. I really do. Even though maybe
yeah,
and I keep saying, I'm like, maybe it just needs to like shake out all the kind of bad players and maybe they'll just like shake themselves out of the scene completely. I mean, that's my
Yeah,
hope. And then what will be left will be, good people, maybe.
yeah. Well, if any of the bad players, it's like, are they permanently a bad player? Is there some way to redeem them and get on the right track?
Yeah.
Because there's a whole different set from people who are, psychopath or narcissistic and doing bad things, and there's no way to get them to stop. The
Yeah.
predatory people. So,
Ay, ay, ay. Well,
uh,
but otherwise, this has been a great conversation.
yeah, I enjoyed this. Yeah,
I don't want anybody getting down on this space. There's so much positive going on, and I
yeah,
know your symposium will be interesting. I will say this, I didn't read the details of your post, but I didn't know it was this like kind of interactive style with the group. So I think this is
yeah.
really cool, and I'm glad you're doing it this way and not just like another like the person that was angry, another like boring
Yeah,
psychedelic
someone talking about their
conference.
research and it's showing bar graphs, and
Yeah.
not that there's anything wrong with that. That's that,
Yeah.
but
Nothing wrong.
we're gonna have none of that for this one. So if you don't come, if that's what you want to see, but you will see researchers and people talking about science
So
in the
cool.
context of these, like, psychedelics and spirituality and
Yeah.
psychedelics and physical health and mental health. I think
It's gonna be
then you
great.
need to look at kind of the data and as
Yeah.
well as
Oh,
talk to
I love the science, but not for like 7 days straight, 24, 24/7.
yeah, yeah.
I like the idea of interactive discussions around the research that's come out, not just like presenting, okay, now what? Well, what do we do with
Yeah.
this?
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
One last thing too.
yeah.
Like for the panel I was on at Psychedelic Science last year was, like you said, you only have like so much time. Like they kept crushing our time down because it had all slides right, and it's like, I guess because to fit more in and more panels and stuff. So at the end, I think we each had 10 minutes with no Q&A. They crushed us down to a half hour, and and
Yeah.
and someone told us that ours was the only talk dealing directly with ethics because it was on safety and accountability in psychedelic
Oh my
communities,
God.
which I think is pretty important. And so, I get up there and like you look down, it's like 9 minutes 30 seconds. Like, oh, I got a lot more slides. I guess so I didn't get to show all the
Yeah.
slides, and it was too rushed
Quick.
to go into something that
Yeah.
important. And so,
Because I went to one of the better panels, but it was so quick. But it was female elders of, I forgot what it was actually
mm,
titled, but it had these women that were just great, and they were elders, and they literally all had like 7 minutes. It
yeah,
was like
and no Q&A probably too, right?
I think it will. And then, because the place was so big, people started leaving during the Q&A because, they only had, it was like 30 minutes, but then you have to leave 10 minutes early to make it to the next talk. So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
If
Well,
you know anybody at the top of psychedelic science, please give them this feedback because it was like,
I'm sure they know that. I
I
mean,
know.
I'm sure I know they know that. But you come to Psychedelic Insights, it's totally different. It's kind of like Horizons or the Breaking Convention, where
Yeah.
everyone sees the same thing. There's a sense of community, networking. There's something about seeing a shared experience. It's like seeing a movie
Yeah.
together. It's like the shared experience. You can talk about it. So it's gonna be more of that. I'm not knocking maps or anything
Yeah.
for, because there's
Great.
pluses and minuses to everything, and so
Yeah.
um,
Well,
I'll
I'll,
just leave it
I'll
at that.
definitely send this around. So, and we'll share around this episode.
Great, great.
Awesome.
I don't know where you live, but you're welcome.
Oh,
I'd
I
love to
know
see you
I'm
out
in New
here.
York, but who knows? Maybe there'll be
Uh,
an
that's
impromptu. You never know.
that's a quick hop across the country,
True.
you know.
It is true.
And it's the last thing you get to before the election, so we
Oh, I
want to
know,
squeeze
right?
that in before that. So, uh, I hope. Well, let's leave it at
That's horrible.
that.
Well,
So,
Brad, it was great to have you on. We'll have all the links here in the show notes for everybody to check out. And it's so great to finally
great.
connect. This was a great
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah. I really enjoyed this, and I'm going to be starting podcasts hopefully soon too. So I'll maybe have you
Fun.
on sometime, and
Woo. Would love to.
yeah,
Yes. Thank you so
great.
much. Thank you for the work you're doing out there. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's not even work. It's play. I love it.